Hello, this is Mark Smith with Family Tree Counseling Associates, and I'm here with one of our very best therapists, Steve Cooper, and we're doing a video series that basically details Steve's approach, his way of working with clients to sort of highlight the work that he does. So we'll start out with a question. Mainly at our practice at Family Tree, we tend to mainly see marital couples or couples that aren't married, and some of them working toward getting married. And we know that Family Tree sort of has an overarching approach, but each therapist does bring their own background and education to it. So describe how you would see a couple here at Family Tree.
Most couples that are having problems, each of them has some vague idea that they're contributing to the problem. Sometimes they don't.
Sometimes not.
Actually, that's why I call it a vague idea. Because mostly their perceptions are that they're being hurt by someone else.
Right.
And they may have a notion that they're contributing to the problems, but it's so undefined and unprocessed that they don't know how to understand it, how to work on themselves directly. And part of the process, how I work with couples, is gently helping them to see their own issues and their role in creating the problems that they're dealing with. And ultimately, I want to lead people to a place where their recognition of how they're keeping themselves emotionally less powerful than they could be is strong, and they recognize a path to becoming emotionally very powerful and capable with other people, including their spouses. So at first it might seem to somebody like what I'm challenging in them is something that they need in order to be powerful or in order to protect themselves or stand up for themselves in some way. And it takes a little bit of time to reorganize that for some people so that they recognize that what they were doing to protect themselves or to stand up for themselves is actually more harm to them than good. So part of what I want to do is help people recognize those patterns and then recognize how to come to a place internally that is very peaceful and very emotionally capable so that they can create more of what they want in their lives. A lot of people aren't aware that they actually are directly involved in creating experiences for themselves that they don't want to have.
Right.
And not consciously, and helping people recognize that the universe isn't happening to them the way it feels. They're not just experiencing it, they're actually creating it.
You sound like that Mark Smith fella.
Yeah.
So you use the word gentle, and different people's approaches here sort of goes not only with their theory but their personality. Mm-hmm. And I tend to a lot of times bang through the front door, sometimes with limited success. You find ways to sometimes slide in the back door if that works best for that particular client.
Well, I don't know if it's the back door. It's more the front door. It's more...
You just don't bang through it with a
no,
lot of fanfare.
Not typically.
Yeah.
Unless on rare occasion I find that is what somebody wants and needs from me.
Yeah, yeah.
But I am direct. I'm just direct in a way that is not in the way I work with people is on how to develop non-reactive understanding of themselves in a non-reactive way of communicating. And that's how I communicate with people generally. And, I'm a human being myself. I've worked on myself quite a bit over the years, so I've overcome a lot of the reactive tendencies that I had in myself and in relationships in the past. I'm not completely out of it, so, I'm also very self-aware. Yeah. So I'm always watching my own reactions.
You seem strategic in your interventions with people, like you really think them through.
I think them through,
yeah.
And they're strategic. And of course, it's born from a lot of experience.
Right.
Doing a lot of therapeutic work with people for 15, 16 years now. Some patterns present and they're not new anymore. where they would have been new, and I would have had to think more in a more complex way about what was happening. How after some familiarity builds up, it's not as complex anymore.
Yeah. Last week we talked about you have sort of a local reputation here in the Indianapolis area of being the teenager whisperer.
Yeah.
And so you do have some expertise and some following in dealing with teenagers. Just briefly, could you talk about how do you handle teenagers?
Well, it's like when working with adults in couples, parents, having each person see their role in creating the problems that they're experiencing. Teenagers are developmentally less able to do that and have that level of self-awareness or that insight. And so working with teenagers, every one of them is different, so there's a different approach to every one.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, it's helping them to know how to restructure their lives, the way they think about things. And the more I can work with the parents to help them do the same, the more successful we become. So a lot of teenagers experience me, I think, as an advocate for them.
Yeah.
With their parents. But it's not as if I'm advocating against the parents. It's more along the lines of each person has in mind what they want, and if they had what they really wanted, they would have a trusting, safe, open, loving, honest relationship with the people that they love. And they don't recognize that their way of being actually is contrary to creating that.
Right.
So it's working with parents and teens to help them to see how to create what they really want. And I think a lot of parents have this misinformation that teenagers are naturally rebellious or naturally, not interested in having good relationships with their parents. And that simply isn't true, but people believe it so much that they almost make it true. And so helping people to see that we all naturally want to love each other, even if the behavior on the surface looks like it's 180 degrees different, and it's consistently different, that's the sign of somebody who is hurting inside, not somebody
Right.
who wants to create chaos.
So you get the parents and maybe other members of the family and the community to see the kid's pain and not judge their behavior.
Correct. And then helping parents teach from a position of peace and capability rather than fear and mistrust.
Yeah.
I think a lot of parents are afraid of what their children are going to do or not do. They don't have the connection with their children that they would need in order to be a good influence on their kids. And even more, maybe what they have with their kids is an antagonistic relationship in which the child blocks out the parent and doesn't have the ability to have. In fact, the influence is negative. Whatever it is you're trying to influence the child, they will do the opposite.
The opposite. Sort of out of
Yeah.
trying to have that sense of self.
Something
But
like
have
that,
it
but it
squashed.
isn't working. So
Yeah.
a lot of working with the teenager is saying, hey, you may not want to feel controlled by your parent, or you may not want to feel, like your parent has the upper hand, but when you rebel, you actually are still losing who you are. That person who submits to everything is losing who he or she is.
Yeah.
And the person who's in a state of rebelling is losing who he or she is.
I now know how radio announcers have to redirect people to cut it short here.
Yeah.
We're trying to keep your
Right.
videos a little shorter. So when we wrap here, tell the folks how they can reach you to set up an appointment.
My cell phone, 370-1657, 317 area code. Would be it.
You're the phone guy. So
Phone guy.
Okay, thanks, Steve. We'll see you next time.
Was that 7 minutes already?